Welcome to the Storytime channel. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven, and today we have some malicious compliance stories. Our first story of the day is by WaterKitty28. Look, Karen, I made a friend. A few years ago, I was meeting two friends at the county fair. I was running late due to the traffic. The fair is a pretty big deal around here, so I told them to go ahead without me. When I finally got there, I went to the ticket booth to buy a ride pass. For $10, you could get a wristband allowing you unlimited rides. This was a much better deal than getting single ride tickets, which cost $1 each. Except this year, something was strange. Usually you could buy just one wristband no problem, but for some reason the only way to buy them this year was to get two at once. Now, obviously my two friends had bought their wristbands together, so I didn't have a second person to buy one with. I went up to the ticket taker, who looked a lot like a stereotypical entitled person. The short blonde bob, the oversized sunglasses on the top of her forehead, the rolls of fat hanging out of her red vest all of the fair workers were wearing. She looked at me and said in the most annoyed voice, "Can I help you?" Yes, I wanted to buy a ride pass, but I don't have a second person to buy it with. Could I just have one wristband? What? Are you telling me you have no friends? Did you seriously come to the fair alone? I didn't come alone, it's just my friends already bought wristbands. That's it? You don't have a sibling, cousin, parent, anything? I find that hard to believe. Yeah, of course I do, they're just not here. And you only have two friends? Maybe if you had more it wouldn't be a problem. Now go off and make a friend, then you can come back and get a pass. Her attitude really annoyed me just about as much as this ridiculous new rule. Like, if they could sell you two passes, then what was the problem with selling one? I get most people don't go to the fair alone, but what if there was an odd amount of people? I really didn't want this annoying ticket taker to have her way, so I did just what she said and decided to make a friend. Standing behind me in the ticket line was a pregnant mom and her daughter, about 8 or 9. I was assuming the mom wasn't going to be riding any rides, and they seemed to be giving in and just getting single ride tickets. That's when I got an idea. I pulled the little girl aside and asked her if she would like to get a ride pass. She said yes, and I got back in line with them. Did you make a friend yet? Asked the annoyed ticket taker. I did actually. Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass, I said, smirking. The ticket taker stuttered and tried talking back, but there was nothing she could do. The rules stated that the pass had to be bought by two people. It never said they had to be together or even know each other. The mom and me each paid $10 and took our wristbands. The daughter thanked me and we parted ways. I went to go catch up with my friends and we spent the rest of the day at the fair. I went back to the fair the next day, but this time with my twin sisters, where I discovered a new rule. The passes only lasted one day and new ones had to be purchased every day of the fair. This was annoying, but there was nothing I could do. Of course, there was the same angry, overweight ticket taker that was there yesterday. My sisters bought their passes together, and I decided to do the same thing I did the previous day just to spite her. I turned to the person behind me and offered to buy our passes together since he was in a group of 3 people. He said yes, and we went up to the ticket booth. Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass, I said while looking at her with a big grin. Even more annoyed than last time, she took each of our tens and gave us wristbands. Of course, she purposefully ripped mine while tearing apart the sheet of bracelets, but it was still so satisfying to beat her at her own game. The next year, the single-person ride passes were back because of complaints from people, including me. Turns out, the fair was just trying to make more money by forcing more people to buy the more expensive single-ride tickets. Their plan didn't work because I had found a simple loophole that was used by other people as well. They still had passes for 2 people at a discount, so for my benefit and theirs, I would always find a stranger and go to the booth where the annoying lady was. She would always be absolutely pissed as I said, "Look, here's my new friend, we would like a ride pass." So let me ask you guys, if you were in line and you realized you didn't have a buddy to go with you so you couldn't get the 2-person ride pass, would you be able to look around and go ask other random people if they would like to buy the pass with you? I think the only downside of this for me is when I was younger, in person, I would have pretty bad social anxiety, so I don't know if I would even want to go look around and try and find somebody. Let me know if you would in the comments down below. Our next story is by Casper Sorensen. Won't let me have an ashtray in the garden? Fine. So many years ago, when I was around 16 or 17, my parents allowed me to smoke in the garden, but would not allow me to have an ashtray to put my cigarette butts in for whatever reason. The only reason I knew was that they did not want me to destroy the aesthetic of the garden, which was already a hole, and they were pretty anti-smoking too, so that was potentially another reason. Anyway, I asked them where they wanted me to put my cigarette butts, and the only response I got was, "Put them wherever you like. We are not having an ashtray in that garden." Which I believe to be absolutely comical. You literally don't want an ashtray in the garden, but you are happy to have butts strewn all over the place? Sure, that's fine. However, I am not the kind of person to throw cigarettes on the floor. Now, I have always had a creative flair, and I thoroughly enjoy art. So I decided I was going to collect my cigarette butts in a little jar and hide that jar behind a bush, moving it at different times to lessen the chances of its discovery. I was still following the rules because, technically, a jar isn't an ashtray. They forgot about the ashtray situation and moved on with their lives until, after about 6 months of collecting cigarette butts, reading this in my head makes it sound so gross, I'm sorry, I had collected loads. My parents went on holiday for 2 weeks, and when they came back, I had constructed a no smoking sign and a "thank you for not smoking" underneath it, all out of the cigarette butts I had collected. They came home to find that, and my mom let out the loudest gasp I had ever heard, and my dad chased me around the garden with a bit of wood, but that's okay, we laugh about it now. Anyway, rules should really be thoroughly thought out before they are set. So I have 2 quick things. 1, I think they didn't want the ashtray in the garden because they wanted to silently discourage smoking. The second is OP said that they would keep moving the jar around from time to time to lessen the chances of its discovery. My question is, if you keep moving it around, how does that lessen the chance of its discovery? If it hasn't been initially found, does the chance of discovering it ever actually just increase by it sitting there versus moving it to a different spot? Unless, of course, you move it to a legitimately better hiding spot, which OP didn't describe. This next story is by Ace2094. Boss told me to follow the schedule. Alright, so this happened a few months ago, but my boss brought it up again today, so I figured I'd share. So my hours at work are so inconsistent, and I was scheduled for a 10-hour shift, but a lot of us don't go by the schedule because they schedule us outside of our availability. So I figured I'd come in at 10 p.m. rather than 12 a.m. and stay until 6:30 rather than 10 because I had explicitly told them I couldn't come in at midnight. But since I left 2 hours early, even though it was an 8-hour shift, my boss gave me crap about not following the schedule. Coincidentally, the next night, I was scheduled from 2 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. And you best believe I came in at 2 a.m. that night. Well, when I came in, my boss was pissed, wondering where I was, because they had a truck unload that started at 10 p.m. and was still going when I got in at 2 a.m. For comparison's sake, a truck unload typically takes about 2 hours. But anyways, they had 3 people total who were unloading the truck, very understaffed during peak season. But when my boss confronted me about why I didn't come in at 10 p.m. to help with the truck unload, all I could tell her was that I was following the schedule. Long story short, she told me to come in at 10 p.m. from then on out and to just disregard the schedule. Being late has never felt so good. Now, I don't know the full context, but it sounds to me like the boss was trying to milk OP for extra hours off the clock, telling you to clock out when you're scheduled to even though you came in a few hours early, and then when you show up for the actual hours, they get upset that you didn't come in early. I mean, I'm glad it got resolved, but it sounds a little fishy. Our next story is by Cranky Novelist. Mom said I had to get a Christmas mask. My mom is a huge Christmas fan. She goes overboard every year. For obvious reasons, we all need masks this year. I had ordered one from a horror narrator I really liked on YouTube. The mask had his logo on it, a skinwalker. As soon as Halloween was over, like 12:01 over, Mom started insisting I needed to get a Christmas-themed mask because the skinwalker one was too scary. After hearing this for a little while, I found that this particular narrator was selling his version of a Christmas mask, a Yeti that had somehow gotten tangled up on multicolored lights. This is when my malicious compliance comes into play. She had said to get a Christmas mask, so I ordered this one. It came in a few days later and I showed her. She tried to say it didn't count. After I explained that she told me to buy one and it could count because of the lights, my 3 siblings agreed with me. When it comes to small stuff like this, we tend to have disagreements. Mom gave up on the Christmas mask after that. Well, I think one good way that you can look at this is that the mom didn't actually force you to do anything in particular. Plenty of moms could have very easily have gone out and bought some cringy Christmas mask and said, "Wear this, you have to wear this." But you went out, bought your own version of a Christmas mask, and yeah, you had a disagreement, but she let it be in the end. She didn't fight you on it, and she didn't force you to do something you obviously didn't want to do. This next story is by The Forever Bored. Want me to wake you up in the middle of the night? Sure. So for whatever reason, my parents make me charge my laptop right outside their room, and I usually stay up late doing homework. One particular night, however, this happened. Mom says, "You better put your laptop to charge outside. If you take it in your room, we're grounding you." I say, "Mommy, I need to do homework. The only reason why I charge it in my room is that I don't want to wake you up when I go to put it to charge at midnight." Mom says, "I don't care. It can't charge in your room." Later that night, I went to go put it to charge. My mom is the lightest sleeper in existence. If you even breathe loudly next to her, she'll wake up. So of course, me going to put it to charge woke her up. Mom comes out of her room and says, "What the heck are you doing?" I say, "Putting the laptop to charge like you told me to." Mom says, "You woke me up." "No, duh." I say, "You were the one who told me to charge it here. If you don't like it, I'll charge it in my room." Mom storms back into her room. She hasn't bugged me about that since then. I don't really get why she wants you to charge it outside of her room, but still lets you use it so late at night. You would think it would be because she's trying to prevent you from using it late at night, but obviously you were using it late at night or later at night anyways. This next story is by Raider Tomboy, Embarrassed My Principal. This story takes place in high school about 4 weeks into second quarter. I was hanging out with my friends in the Bayou lunchroom and we were talking about something. Then an administrator walked over to me and said, "Mr. Zimbabwe has asked you to take off your hat." For context, the hat I was wearing was a cattleman cut cowboy hat that I had bought after my grandfather passed. I wore it to remember him as he was a cowboy, and to improve my own look. I asked how Mr. Z knew, and the admin pointed over, and there was my principal scowling with his iconic double chin. So I asked the admin, "Can I go negotiate with him?" The admin said, "Sure, I don't see why not." So I walked over to Mr. Z and said, "Listen, Mr. "I don't want to hear it, Mr. Park. You have to follow the school rules." Then he took my hat to the security office. So I made a little plan. I would look for any loophole to get my hat back in. I looked at the school rules, but the hat rule didn't specify wide brim Western style hats. So I went to get my hat back, then went to Mr. Z and he told me to take it off. I then said to him, "I'm following the rules like you said. The rules say baseball hats and caps, not cowboy hats." He just sat there dumbfounded as the end of the day bell rang and I walked out of the school proud of myself. How much you want to bet that the next year or the next semester or whatnot, the rules were changed and cowboy hats were not allowed? Taking all bets. And our final story of the day is by Stupidly Ugly, How to Break a Dress Code. I broke the dress code at my last firm because of shoes. I got called to the carpet for wearing black Skechers to work, so I started coming in every day dressed to the nines. We're talking cufflinks, high-quality silk ties, gold face metal band watch, pocket squares, some of the finest bourbon wingtips you've ever laid eyes on. I got tailored dress shirts and custom suits cut for freak's sake. It wasn't cheap. I did this every day while making sure to casually point out that the very managers who complained about me were wearing Keds in the office. This went on for a few months. The interns and staff started dressing like me. We started comparing notes on tie knots and pocket square folds. We got high in tight haircuts with straight razor shaves. We bought badger hair shaving brushes and eucalyptus shaving soap. The partners started getting embarrassed as we were dressing considerably nicer than they cared to. They had a big meeting and declared the entire dress code dead. Jeans, t-shirts, flip-flops, all fair game unless you had a client meeting. That's a pretty good way of handling it, honestly, because they got upset about one small thing about the way you dressed. You dress up sharper and nicer than they can even dream to ever dress up. You dress up so nice that they go and kill the entire dress code just so they can get you to stop doing it. You gotta give props to yourself for embarrassing them so bad about the way they dress that they killed the dress code so you could stop dressing like that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So, which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here on the Storytime channel.